We continue now at the top of Daf Chavdalad Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 24b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a Mishnah Meseches Machshir, which said that if you find an item in an area which is majority Jewish, you have to announce the item. If you find it in an area which is majority Canaanim, so then you don't have to announce the item. And initially, the Gemara thought that this Mishnah is following Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Rav Shimon ben Elazar again says that in general, if you find an item in an area where there's a lot of people, you're allowed to keep the item. And so the Gemara wanted to prove from this Mishnah that concept that you're allowed to keep the item, according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, is only in an area which is majority Canaanim. But if it's an area which is majority Jewish, you're not allowed to keep the item. You have to announce the item. And the Gemara now says, if you want, I could say Liolam Rabbanan. Really, this Mishnah actually is not Rav Shimon ben Elazar. It's actually the Rabbanan. Now, according to the Rabbanan, also we had a question. What exactly do the Rabbanan hold? And Rashi here explains, Rabbanan. You could say it's really the Rabbanan. We're talking about an item that is not concealed. But don't derive from this Mishnah the module barov Canaanim, that the Rabbanan admit to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar that if it's majority Canaanim, you can keep the item, because that's not what the Mishnah is saying at all. As the Gemara now explains, Mi Kotani, Hein Shalo, does the Mishnah say that if it's an area majority Canaanim, Hein Shalo, that he's allowed to keep the item? It doesn't say that. It just says, Eino Chayav Lahachris Kotani. It just says that if it's an area that's majority Canaanim, he doesn't have to announce the item. V'yaniach v'yaisi Yisrael v'yoy be'simon v'shakal. He needs to just place the item in his home, safekeeping. He needs to keep the item safe, and then if a Jewish person will come and give a siman, then that Jewish person will be able to take the item, and so therefore it's no proof, this Mishnah is no proof in terms of the position of the Rabbanan. And Rashi explains, Mi Kotani v'chulu eino chayav lahachris Kotani, does it say it's his? It says he's not obligated to announce it. To Kavan Deruba Canaanim, since the majority of the people in the area are Canaanim, Dilma de Canaanim, who maybe it really belongs to the Canaanim. V'shalo nami lo have, but he's not allowed to keep the item either. Delo azli Rabbanan basaruba b'mamona, because the Rabbanan don't follow majority when it comes to mammon, when it comes to money. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come and hear the following proof. The Yamar Ravasi, because Ravasi says, Matzah chavis yayin be'ir sharuba Canaanim. If a person finds a barrel of wine in a city that's majority Canaanim, muteres mishum Metziah, it's mutter as a found object, v'asura bahana, but it's prohibited to derive benefit from the wine, because the wine of a non-Jew is going to be prohibited. Ba Yisrael v'nasan basimin. Now, if a Jewish person comes and gives a siman and identifies that it's actually his, so now muteres b'shasiya lemotzi, you don't actually have to return it to the Jewish person, because again, we assume yish over here, it was in a public place, it was an area that's majority Canaanim, but now the person who found it is allowed to drink from the wine because he knows that it had actually belonged to a Jew. And so the Gemara says, Keman, now who is Ravasi following? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. He's following Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Shmami naki kam Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, barov Canaanim. You see that when did Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar say his halacha, that if it's in an area where there's a lot of people, you're allowed to keep the item, that's specifically when it's an area that's majority Canaanim. Aval barov Yisrael lo, but if it's an area that's majority Jewish, he would not say that. That's why Ravasi says you're only keeping the barrel of wine, again, because it's an area not only with a lot of people, but it's an area with a lot of people and it's majority Canaanim. And the Gemara responds, Liolam Eimalach, really I can say to you, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Afilu Barov Yisrael Nami Kam. Rav Shimon ben Elazar, he would say his halacha that you can keep the item if it's again in an area where there's a lot of people, even if it's a majority Jewish area. Ravasi, Savar Lakavasi Bechadu, Palagala Bechadu, could be that Ravasi, he agrees with Rav Shimon ben Elazar in a situation of Rov Canaanim, but he does not agree with Rav Shimon ben Elazar in a situation of Rov Yisrael. And the Gemara asks, but in the beginning of the statement of Ravasi, it said that the wine is Asr Bahana. Now, if it's true that the wine is Asr Bahana, because we assume it belonged to a non-Jew, Muteres Mishum Metziah L'Mahilchasa, what did it mean when Ravasi said that it's mutter as a found object? If you can't have the wine, what exactly are you doing with this barrel of wine? And the Gemara says, Amar Ravashi says, L'kankana, we're talking about using the barrel itself, meaning the barrel is going to be permitted. That's not going to be a problem. In terms of the wine, that's going to be Asr, because we assume it's non-Jewish wine, unless again, if a Jewish person comes and gives a siman, then we realize it belonged to a Jew, but still the person who found it is able to keep it because the original owner had despaired. And Rashi explains, Muteres Mishum Metziah Deino Chayav Lahachris. Again, he's not chayav to announce it in this situation. He's allowed to keep the item, Vasura Bahana, but he can't get any benefit from the wine. Well, the Kamei Parach, the Gemara later will ask him, Kain Ma Heter Yesh B'Metziasa. Again, if he can't get benefit from the wine, so in what way is the Metziah permitted? Now, Bo Yisrael V'Nasan Siman, if a Jew comes and gives a siman, Yotzos Misafik Yain Canaanim, now we know it's not the wine of Canaanim. Muteres B'Shasi, and it can be drunk, Lamotza, meaning the person who found it can drink it. Tekevin Deruba Canaanim, Nisyai Shua Bailam. Because since the majority of the people in the area are Canaanim, so we know again that the original owner has despaired. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. There was a person who found 4 zuz that were bound in a cloth, v'shadu ben harbiron, and they were thrown into the river Biron. Asalakami de Rav Yehuda came before Rav Yehuda. Amar le Rav Yehuda said to him, Zil achras, you have to announce the lost item. And the Gemara says, Vazuto shal yamhu, but isn't this a case of the tide of the sea? We generally say that's considered to be hefker, the person is allowed to keep the item. And the Gemara says, Shanin harbiron, the river Biron is different, kevan de miska lo miyash, because there are obstacles in that river that are holding things from getting swept away, so lo miyash, the person is not going to despair. But the Gemara continues, Varuba Kananim ninu, but this is an area with a lot of people, and majority Kananim, and we're saying that the person has to announce the item. Shmami na ein halacha Rav Shimon ben Elazar, afilu barov Kananim. Should we see from here that the halacha is not like Rav Shimon ben Elazar, even in a situation with majority Kananim, he's not allowed to keep the item. And the Gemara says, Shani Naharbir, and it's different by the river Biran, the Yisrael Sachrule, because it was the Jews who dammed that river, the Yisrael Charule, and it's also the Jews who are dredging that river, and therefore, Kavan the Yisrael Sachrule, Emor mi Yisrael Nafal, since it's Jews who dammed the river, we say that maybe it fell from a Jew, V'Kavan the Yisrael Karule, and since it's the Jews who are dredging the river, Lo miyayish, the person will not despair, because he'll assume again that it was found by one of the Jews. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yehuda have a shakel v'yazal b'asrei demar Shmuel b'shuka d'veidisa. Rav Yehuda was following the master Shmuel in the marketplace where they sold pounded grain. Amar Lei said to him, Matzakan arniki ma'u, if a person finds over here a purse, what's the halacha? Amar Lei said to him, Hareilu shalo, belongs to him, he can keep it. Bo Yisrael v'nasan bo siman ma'u, if a Jew comes and gives a siman, what's the halacha? Amar Lei said to him, Chayiv l'hachzer, then the person is obligated to return the arniki. The Gemara says, Tarti, that seems to be two things that are contradictory. Either he can keep it, or he has to return it. And the Gemara says, Amar Lei said back to him, Lifnim Meshuras Hadin, we're talking about going beyond the letter of the law. Really, he is able to keep it, but if a Jew comes, he should go beyond the letter of the law and return it to the Jew who gave the siman. Kihadi Avu de Shmuel, it's like the story with the father of Shmuel. Ashka Chana Chamri b'Madbara, he found donkeys in the wilderness. V'adrinu l'marayu l'vasar treiser yarchei shasa, and he returned it to their owners after 12 months of a year, and that was Lifnim Meshuras Hadin. Again, that was beyond, that was above the letter of the law. And the Gemara continues, Rava have a shakel v'yazal basrei de Rav Nachman b'shuka de Galdoi. Rava was following after Rav Nachman in the marketplace of the tanners. V'yamri la b'shuka de Rabbanan. Some say the story was in the marketplace of the Rabbanan. Amar Lei said to him, Matzakan arniki ma'u, if we find over here a purse, what's the halacha? Amar Lei said to him, Hareilu shalo, we can keep it. Bo Yisrael v'nasan bo siman ma'u, now if a Jew comes and gives a siman, what's the halacha? Amar Lei said to him, Hareilu shalo, we can still keep it. V'alo omid v'tzavach, but isn't the person standing there and screaming? And he answered, Nasek itzavach al beiso shanafal, it's like a person screaming about his house that fell. The al svinaso shatava b'yamar, about his ship that sunk in the sea. That doesn't really, even though it happened, it's too bad that it happened, but nevertheless, it does not belong any longer to the original owner. And the Gemara continues, there was a dio, which is a certain kind of bird, that took a piece of meat from the marketplace and threw it into the palm trees in the house of Bar Mirion. The person who found the meat came before Abaya. Amar Lei said to him, Zil shkol nafshach, you could take it for yourself. The Gemara says, Varuba di Yisrael ninu, but isn't it an area which is majority Jewish? Shamat mina halachik Rav Shimon ben Elazar, afilu barov Yisrael. Should we see from here that the halach is like Rav Shimon ben Elazar, even in an area which is majority Jewish, but if there's a lot of people, we assume the owner despairs, and again, you're allowed to keep the item. And the Gemara says it's not a proof. Shani dayo, it's different by the bird, the chezuto shal yam dami, because that's similar to the tide of the sea, where we say effectively the item becomes ownerless. But the Gemara continues, Vamarab, but didn't Rav say basar shenesalim mino ayin aser, that if you have meat that's hidden from the eye, if it's not supervised, then that meat is aser. And the Gemara says to that, biomid v'roeo. The case over here is the person was standing and watching the entire time, so it was never without supervision. And Rashi explains, Aser, again, Basar Shenesalim in Ayin is forbidden, Shaman Eschalef in Avela, because maybe it got mixed up with non-kosher meat. And the answer was, V'roeo misha not lo ad shlich. We saw the bird from the moment it was taken until the bird threw it among the trees, and therefore it was never Nesalim min ha'ayin. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Rabbi Chanina matzah gedi shachet bein Tiveria l'tzipore. Rabbi Chanina found a young goat that was slaughtered between Tiveria and Tzipore. V'tiru lo, and the sages permitted that goat to him. Amar Rabbi Yami said, "He tiru lo mishum Metziah, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar." They allowed it to him in terms of a found object, like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. It was found in a public place, therefore the owner despaired. It was permitted. And mishum shchita, and the reason why the shchita was considered permitted, it was considered to be kosher. Rabbi Chananya beno shel Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. That follows the opinion of Rabbi Chananya, the son of Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, hareisha avdalo gedoya v'tarnagol, if a person lost his goats or his chickens, v'halachu mitzan shchutim, and he went and he found that they were slaughtered slaughtered. Rabbi Yehuda says it's prohibited. You can't rely on that shechita. Rabbi Chananya ben Oshel Rabbi Yossi Haglili matter, but Rabbi Chananya, the son of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, he says it's mutter. Amar Rebbe says near in divrei Rabbi Yehuda k'shemitzon ba'ash, but it seems that Rabbi Yehuda is correct if you find it in the garbage heap, because then it was thrown away because the shechita was probably not good. V'divrei Rabbi Chananya ben Oshel Rabbi Yossi Haglili k'shemitzon b'bayis. But the words of Rabbi Chananya, the son of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, those words seem correct if he finds them in the house. And so in any case, again, it's mutter in this situation. It's not considered to be stealing, and it's also mutter. We assume that the shechita was a kosher shechita. And so the Gemara now infers, midihitiru lo misham shechita, from the fact that they're saying that it's a kosher shechita, ruba Yisrael ninu, it sounds like the area is majority Jewish, and still we're saying he's allowed to keep the item. Shamat mina halachik Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar afilu barov Yisrael. It seems from here that the halach is like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, that if it's found in a public place, we assume that the owner has despaired, and that's true even in a situation where the area is majority Jewish. And the Gemara says that's not necessarily a proof. Amar Rava says, Rov Kananim, the area actually was majority not Jewish. However, V'rov Tavchi Yisrael, but most of the slaughterers, they happen to be Jewish, and that's why we assume it was kosher, but it doesn't necessarily prove what the halacha would be if in the area it was Rov Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Ami Ashkach Pargios Shechutos Bein Teveri Tzipore. Rabbi Ami found small birds that were shechted between Teveri and Tzipore. Asal Lakamid Ravasi came before Ravasi. V'amrila Lakamid Rav Yochanan. Some say he came before Rav Yochanan. V'amrila Be Midrasha. Some say he came to the study hall. V'amrule, and they said to him, Zil Shkol Nafshach, you can take that for yourself. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Ashkach Kibura. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha found, this is like spun threads, the Azli Be Azluya, that the people who make the nets for trapping the animals, they use those threads. Asal Lakamid Rav Yochanan, he came before Rav Yochanan. V'amrila Be Midrasha. Some say he came to the study hall. V'amrule, and they said to him again, Zil Shkol Nafshach, you could take it for yourself again because it was found in this public area. And Rashi explains, Pargios gozolos, again, these are small birds. Ashkach gibore da'azli be'azluye means matzah pekios sheltevi, he found the spun thread, lemichmoros varishtos, for various traps and nets. B'makom shatzayodim mitzuyin, this is an area where the hunters are frequent. Azluye is tzayodim, ha'osim michmoros, again, these are the hunters who make their traps. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Ve'elu chayiv lahachriz, the following items a person is chayiv to announce. Matzah peiros bakli, if he finds produce in a vessel, o kli kamosha, or just finds the vessel empty. Mos bakis, if he finds money in a pouch, o kis kamosha, or he just finds the pouch empty. Tzibore peiros, if he finds piles of produce. Tzibore mos, piles of money. And Rashi explains, Matzah peiros bakli ustam kli yesh bo siman, generally a kli has a siman. Kamoshu means reikon, again it's empty. Kis yesh bo siman labailam, a pouch, there's a siman. Tzibore peiros, piles of produce. Begamar mefarish simanayu. The Gemara will explain what the siman is in this case. O minyan, either it's the number, o makam, or it's the location, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Hey Amud Aleph.